Another recording to another series. Today we are going to start a React app where we are going to implement a blog, a simple blog. No database or anything. We're going to save everything just with the React app using state. And here is a peek at what it's going to look like. You can see the beautiful design. But here are some example posts. So we can create a new post. And then some new content and create a post, and you can see it shows up here, and we have these buttons that we can like the posts or unlike them, and as well as remove them or delete them. So that's what we are going to do. This should be a few part series. So just to start, I have a basic create React app application. If you don't know exactly what that is, then I'll link it in the video description. But this is the boilerplate where we're going to delete a lot of the stuff, just so we have the very, very basic application. So we can get rid of the CSS and the logo, and all we have is the application. So just a bit of structure really quick is that we have two main components here. We have the post form, which is creating the new post, and then we have the blog list, or the blog posts, which is the list of blog posts. So in this video we are going to hopefully complete the implementation of the blog form. So let's get started. And we are going to use hooks, or use functional components, not class-based components. So as we can see, that's already in Create React App. It used to be that they would have the class implementation of the components, but now the default is just functions. Functional components. So let's get right to it. And so the first thing we are going to create is the blog component, which is going to hold everything else. It's going to hold the form and going to hold the list. So let's see here. We're going to create a new folder, which we'll call components. That will have all of our component files. We're going to create a blog.js component. Now we're going to import React and create a new function called blog, which is going to also be the default export. And now inside this blog component, we are going to render both the form and the list, and also some different handlers that we're going to need as we go along. So let's start first by creating the blog form. So let's actually create another component. This will be the blog form component.js. We're going to also import React here, and then have the blog form as the component. We're going to import props. We'll see what we'll do with that props in a second. And then that's also going to be the default export. Okay. So now, actually we don't need props here. Actually we do. We do need props. So what we're going to do is we are going to use this form to create new posts. And in order to do that, just to look back at our final product, we need these two fields, a name and content, and then the button to submit the post, to add the post to our application. So let's start by creating a return function where we are going to return the form. And in this form, it's going to be some JSX. That we're first going to start with a section that has in it a form. And in the form, we're going to have an onSubmit. Actually, we'll do that in a second. That's the button. We'll do that in a second. But let's first get this all down. We'll have a div, then a label, and then the label is the name. HTML4, we're going to call this title for the content, for the post title. And we'll have this as title. Originally I had it as name, but I think it makes more sense as title. Now we're going to have an input, just type text, an ID of title, and then the value. So first let's start by creating some state. Actually, you know what, we're going to first create, that's the title, and we'll create the other two things that we need. We also need the content, which is the content here, as well as the button. So let's create the button of type submit. Which will I'll write this as publish post, and we type submit. So now, if you've worked with React before, we know that we have to use state in order to save, in order to kind of work with this data here. So since we're using hooks, we are going to use state. We'll have two different states. We'll have one for the title, one for the content. So let's first import the hook up here, and then the useState hook returns two variables. It returns the state which we're going to use. So let's, and this looks a little bit funny the first time you see it, but once you start working with it, it makes more sense. So the first that we're going to have is the title, which is the entered title and the set entered title. So the entered title is the actual variable that's stored in the field, and then the set entered title is a function that we can use to change the title, and we'll use that in our labels in a second, or in the inputs. And this will be entered content and set entered content, and will be an empty string. And what happens as we type in these fields is that these values will get updated, and then we'll use these functions to update the values. So let's see. First, we're going to do the title. And in the input here, the value is going to be the entered title. So when it first renders, it's just going to be an empty string, because that's the value we have up here as the initial value. And as we type here, it will change. So now we're going to put the onChange function, and it'll be an event with an arrow function, and then we're going to call the function of set enter title, this function, to update the title state every time something is entered into the field, every time like a character is entered in. We get a target value there. So just to reiterate, the entered title is the value currently in the field of this text, and then the onChange is a function that we call from useState to change that value. And we're going to use the same thing over here for content. We're just going to change it to entered content and then set entered content. And set entered content here. So now what we're saying is that every time we type in the field, we should update this state here. I'm just going to update the rest of this, or save it all. And then, so the next thing we have to do is implement the submit here. But first, I want to actually, let's just get this project up and running. First, I have to close my other one, actually. But let's launch it so we can see what's happening with the state here. And in order to test it out, in order to launch, you have to do npm start. But in that browser, the best way to kind of debug and to figure out everything that's going on with your React app is to install the Chrome. I'm going to be using Chrome and the Chrome developer tools. And these tools really tell you everything that's going on with your app, and can tell you the state and sorts out by components. It's really useful. I'll put a link to that in the to download that in the video description. So let's see what we get here when we render this. Oh, this is what we get. We get nothing. That's because we have to hook this up. It's already, we have to put the blog form into a blog, and we have to put blog into our app. So I'm actually going to do something here. We actually don't really need the app. We're just going to use the blog. And then we'll change the index.js. Instead of doing app from app, we're going to do blog from components and then the blog here. And instead of app here, we're going to do blog. So that's now the index.js is going to render blog. We can actually delete app.js. But now we still have to put our blog form into the blog. So let's show us why these guys are here. Let's return here our blog form. Why can't I return this? Because I messed this guy up. Okay. Don't know what happened there, but let's. So now, with everything hooked up, we should be good to go. So now we have the blog form being rendered in blog. And if we look, this is what we get. So now what we can do to see what the state is we can use, these are the Chrome developer tools. Again, I'll put a link if you don't have them to download them. And right now, we have two states which are both empty. But now let's start typing title. Let's just start title, and you'll notice the first state becomes title because it's calling this function of set enter title, and every time we put a new character, it updates the state. And the same thing with the content field. It will update the state every time. So that's that. And there's one more thing I want to do before we end this video, and that is implement the submit handler here. So in the form, we're going to add a submit handler on submit, and we're going to call it the submit handler. Now the submit handler is just a function that we're going to implement up on top outside. Sorry, right under the use state, and we're going to call it the submit handler. We're just going to take in an event. First prevent the default. And then what we want to do is we want to take the props, which we get in over here. We're going to get, it's going to be whatever we pass in over here. We want to actually, we don't want to do anything because you don't have it yet. But we're going to just, once we put submit, we're going to reset the entered content to an empty string and also the title entered content both to an empty string. And then in the next video, we're going to add some other, we're going to add the functionality to actually add this post to our quote-unquote database. So now we should see if we type in here and type in here, when we publish the post, everything should go to an empty string. And that's what happens. Thank you so much for joining me. And in the next episode, we're actually going to add new posts and to view them down here. I'll see you then.